Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 141. My name is NBZ, and I just had pizza last night, and I watched Star Wars Celebration, and I was relaxed, and it was great, and life was good. How are you doing, Bally?
I'm doing well, NBZ. I was not a fan of the format of these celebration discussions.
They're all like big panels with people chatting for long periods of time and in the build-up to keep the audience hooked until the trailer happens.
So the guy comes on and he's like, I bet you guys are hyped for this reveal. It's like, yes, that's why we're here. We don't have to talk about it. Like, let's get into it. We don't have to keep going around in circles and wasting my life away.
Hosts always do the same thing where they're like, you love it, don't you? And they're like, yeah, why did we pay like $600 to come out and get a hotel and like be here for 4 days? Like, come on, like, yes, we love it. But you know, that's the nature of things like that. People are excited. People want to be more excited.
It makes me grateful that Nintendo do their directs in the lean, quick, powerful, just announcements coming straight at you and information rather than just the
meandering,
the stalling, it just feels pointless stalling. It's just the bane of these presentations.
Yeah, definitely. But again, it's a different audience and it's a different type of thing. And I think video game players are less patient, maybe, than other people for various reasons. But anyway, yeah, Star Wars is happening. We watched the episode 9 trailer. I'm fucking excited, man. I'm very, very stoked.
It's a very good trailer. It is a very, very good trailer.
Absolutely. And we've got a Star Wars game coming out hopefully this year. We'll see.
November 15th they're confident about.
Yeah, I mean that's the leak at the moment, but
we shall see. No, they I think they announced November 15th.
Oh, did they? Did they say it?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Man, okay. Well,
you obviously tuned out by the end.
I did. No, I mean I kind of watched the trailer, stuck around for a couple more minutes, then I was like, well, I'm bouncing. I don't want to watch any more of this.
Yeah, that was a whole long interview with the main actor who's playing Cal, whose name I forgot.
Apparently he plays Joker in Gotham, the TV series, which I watched for a little bit and then kind of fell off of. But yeah.
So yeah, November 15th, supposedly.
Yeah. Anyway, enough about our second most important thing on the podcast, which is Star Wars. Time to talk about our first most important thing, which is, of course, Nintendo and video games. Yes, so that's what we're going to be doing today. Bally, do you want to let people know what we're going to be talking about?
Slightly shorter show, 2-segment show. We're going to talk about what we've been playing, and then second segment, we've got your emails.
Yes, the reason we're doing this is because we are pre-recording stuff because Bally is off to Japan again very soon, so we need to have episodes prepped, so we're doing a bit of a shorter show for this one so that we can have one when Bally is in Japan so that we're all kind of organised for that stuff. So that's why, but yeah, we'll kick things off then with video games we've been playing, and Bally, I think the next game we're going to talk about, the first game we're going to talk about, is very important, I think, to this show because it's a developer who, we really enjoyed from the 3DS era, and it's from a time and place where not many people were playing or paying attention to Nintendo and Nintendo games. And so, like, eShop games like Gunman Clive, when it came out, we loved and we chatted about a whole bunch, but we really didn't hear many other people talking about it. And now Bertel Horberg, who is the dude who made both Gunman Clive games, has put out his first Switch game. And people seem to be liking it, and I've seen some more people talk about it. I still think it's a bit of a niche thing, so I'd love to...
Yeah, it's definitely gone under the radar a bit, and I think that is partly just because there is so much on Switch coming out every single week, and
absolutely,
it's hard to keep up with the news cycle, the everything that's coming out. But yeah, Mechstermination Force from Horberg Productions, which is a boss rush game. It is everyone's comparing it to Contra. It's Punch Out because it's just bosses, I guess.
Sure. Shadow of the Colossus in some senses.
So just to repeat all those things that every reviewer has been repeating over and over again about this game. But that format is so strong. I could not put this game down. I think that the animation of like the character and the jumping looks incredibly similar to Gunman Clive, and like it must be the brightest post-apocalyptic world that I've ever played in a game.
Oh yeah, no, it is. And interestingly, he put up a Twitter post talking about how he got all the different shading and colors and everything without having a complex lighting engine in the game. And it turns out that most of the textures in the game are all just black and white, and then he layers colors over the different shades of black and white, which is it's a very interesting like insight into game development, like how you use these tricks to kind of paper glue things together in the background, where it kind of comes out and it looks really good.
And honestly, that's kind of important with a game like this, where it is a Switch game which doesn't have the same oomph as a PS4 or whatever. So it's important that, as it is a boss rush game, that when you die, it's quick loading back in. And this game has almost no loading times often. It's very quick, straight between matches. Yeah. So I'm sure that whole color shading thing you just talked about helped with that. And the actual format of just facing bosses, obviously I've not played Cuphead. It's coming out later this month. I want to pick that up later.
And even Cuphead is not just bosses, because they added in the run and gun levels.
Well, exactly. They sort of, it was going to be just bosses, wasn't it? And then they sort of said, actually we should have
it's because people complained about it, and I was like, at the time I was like, people, why are you complaining about this? Just deal with the bosses. That's what this game is. That's the vision of it. And yes, Cuphead has those run and gun levels. I think they're actually a lot better than they could have been. I imagine they weren't going to be that great. I did enjoy them, but they are definitely the weakest aspect of the game. They're not as good as the core, which is the boss fights.
Whereas this game is just totally confident in being purely boss fights, and there is a hub world that you can jump around and kind of get upgrades at the shop and replay matches and speak to people, and that's nice. But it is purely bosses, and it just the running and gunning feels really good in my view. Initially, I wasn't the biggest fan of the jump, but you do unlock a double jump, and
I think the jump is a little bit weird, right? Because the momentum switching in the air is a bit tricky, and the place where I notice it the most is when you're in the main hub area and you're trying to jump up to that roof where the place is that you can kind of replay the bosses. And like going from left to right and like kind of moving my momentum midair, I realized, this jump is kind of similar to what he used in Gum and Clive. And I think in that game, because it was all about forward momentum and not necessarily going back as much, I didn't notice it as much, but in this game, it's definitely a bit more noticeable, and it can put you in some tricky situations. I think initially one of the trickier bosses is the second boss, because the first one's a tutorial and you kind of like mow it down pretty easily, and then you start being like, oh, actually, I'm going to start dying quite a bit on these bosses. And the second boss is this giant centipede type thing, and it turns itself into a ball at some point, and it's rolling around, and you can kind of get stuck on the left side, and jumping and getting the timing of the jumping over the electricity can feel a little bit not unfair, precise. A little unfair, a little not precise, and a little like if you press the button, sometimes they don't jump necessarily.
Yeah, I felt that a lot with, there's like a snail boss, and at one point you go inside the shell and it's spinning around and you're kind of...
Right, and it's rotating. For me, that one was better because you had the grab ability at that point. So the climb ability, basically you kind of roll out as you go along and the bosses get a bit bigger and more complex, and you get the ability to double jump, you get the ability to like hang off metal. But it's very important that it's metal, because most of these bosses have some form of armor. And one of my favorite things about the game actually is that the armor is so well visually distinctive from the other parts of the boss.
It's very colorful. Like, it's like, that's armor, I need to shoot it.
It's very colorful, very bright. And every time you hit it, it will go a bright red. It will very clearly indicate this is the thing that is breakable, this is the thing you want to destroy. And there's a real satisfaction in the bullets just like smashing themselves into the armor and then just cracking and breaking off. I really love that feeling, and I think it's one of my favorite things about the game is just taking pieces of armor off of these giant mechanical robots, and then finding those points that you can like now climb on top of them and deal big damage.
There's always fantastic feedback on, am I hitting the right spot of this boss or am I not? It's always made very clear you need to remove that armor, you're now hitting the weak spot and you are doing damage. And as someone who like feels that controls are of utmost importance, yes, I do think that the jump isn't great, and I think that there are things that you could tweak about it to make it feel better. But in terms of the feel of the shooting, I think it is an instant thing. As soon as I picked it up, as soon as I started playing, I was like, wow, this feels great. I just love how these bullets look. I love how they feel, and just the swiftness of the movement with the analog stick. It feels very
And this
good.
is a game that you have to use an analog stick for, really. You can use the D-pad to control, but when it comes to kind of run and gun games like this at this point in time, a lot of them use analog sticks for very precise precision shooting.
You're immediately limited to 8 directions if you choose to use a D-pad.
Exactly,
you're not able to
and you kind of need the precision for this game because of the places, the weird spots that they put turrets and armor and all that type of stuff.
Often you're standing so far away from bosses, and there's like weapons like the laser, and we should say like the weapons are directly copied from a game like Contra, where you have the laser, the spread, the standard gun, the flamethrower, and then like there's like a wave beam thing as well, but they're like all directly from Control, which I think is nice.
Yeah, it's not very shy about its influences, which is cool.
Yeah, and I love that because, and like just saying, at points you are standing very far from the bosses, so it is incredibly important that there is precision in how you aim stuff like the laser and getting the hits on those bosses.
Definitely,
and it is a very hard game. You die a lot, and there are only a handful of bosses, maybe 2 or 3 in the whole game I defeated first time. Like some of the bosses took crazy number of time. When I beat the game, it said I'd had 99 deaths. So I know you're nearing the end of the game, MB.
Yeah, I've got 3 more to do. So if you're pretty close,
I'll be interested to see how many deaths you've got. Because I thought I'd have way more than 99, so I was a little surprised. But as difficult as the game is, I do think it is fair because of this system that it introduces, where you build up money based on like the number of times you fight a boss. You will constantly gain money, and using that money you can then buy more hearts, and you can also buy weapon upgrades. So
definitely,
even if you have died 20 times on a boss, you are getting something out of the game, and like it's a really good example of positive feedback.
Right, it's not just banging your head against it, you are always gaining something. So like even if you spent half an hour fighting a boss and you're like, oh, I've got nowhere, well, you're getting 2 things actually, because the first thing is obviously like the monetary reward that you can then go back into the base and spend, but also you do learn, right? Like you do learn the patterns, and you get to the point where you're not taking any hits for certain phases because you know exactly what to do now, and you can do it a lot faster. And the game has a high score system built into it with like a 3-star system, which I think is just based on time. I believe is like how fast you defeat the boss.
There is also a bonus star for like not taking any damage, which just seems unreal. But yeah.
Well, no, I think it's possible. I definitely think a lot of these bosses are definitely possible for you to do that. It doesn't seem unfeasible to me. I think it'll take a lot of time and work and effort for people to do that. But yeah, I think that the thing that I like the most is, so the idea for this, I believe, would have originated in Gunman Clive 2, because I remember the final boss of that game being a giant robot thing that you had to climb up of, and you had to like take various parts of it down and eventually just defeat it. And this basically is taking that one concept of that boss and saying, what if I made a whole game about this? And so far, my favorite boss fights have been the ones where you are basically going through the interior of it. There's one early on with these 2 like giant heads that are like very long heads, and the entire boss fight is you finding an opening at the bottom and then climbing up its insides, dealing with the turrets that are shooting at you, and just essentially dodging its hands as its hands like shoot laser beams from the side to its interior. And I just love that idea. It's just such a smart thing of the boss fight is not only, taking down these parts and
it's a level in itself,
the glowing red bits. Right, it's a platforming level in a sense, and I love that idea. It's some of the best Mario boss fights in 3D World, 3D Land are based on, they're just platforming things, gauntlets almost. And yes, the platforming's not the best part of it, but I think once you have the grab where you can kind of climb on things, it makes it a lot better and makes those parts a lot more feasible overall. Yeah.
I know, like overall, I think like the final boss goes to all kinds of crazy places that I don't want to spoil, but it's a nice finish to what is a pretty crazy game. And I think there's 14 bosses total. I think the game costs something like 12 quid. So I beat the whole game in like 4.5 hours, 4 hours. So it's not the longest of games, and certainly the length of the game depends on how quickly you defeat these bosses. But I think it is a really impressive package, and as we said, like it has kind of gone under the radar a little bit just because there are so many games coming out. But if you're a big fan of anything run and gun,
right, and that's the thing, like there are a lot of games that come out on Switch and that I look at and I'm like, well, I don't know what this is. This doesn't seem like it has any, buzz about it. I don't know what it does. And I was really afraid that would happen to this game just because there are so many of those types of games that pop up on the eShop. But I hope that more people will talk about it because it is a proven developer that we know has a track record, who has made really great games in the past. And I think, honestly, has now got the opportunity to really do well because he, I think, undercharged for Gunman Clive. And Gunman Clive is a very short game. It's like an hour and a half maybe, and the second game is similar. But it was like literally £2 to play Gunman Clive 1 and 2. And those games are fantastic. And I think that, this is definitely worth your money. It is worth checking out. And I think people should be talking about it a bit more because it's a lot of fun. And it's the kind of difficult that I like. It is, for me, that's why I liked Cuphead. It's why it's a very different why to why I like something like Celeste, because that is very much, 30-second bits of dying and restarting, whereas this is more like a couple of minutes dying and restarting, but it is more about learning the patterns, getting familiar with it, and really nailing it. And because there's so much variety, there's so many times when bosses will just, you think you're done, and then whoops, no, there's another phase. And I think it's the best example of that is early on when you're fighting this giant dude who's like got really long arms and he's like punching them at you, and you're taking down his parts. And you're like, okay, I'm finally done with him. I've got the final headshot, and then he just like collapses, turns into like an alligator, and starts chomping at you as you're running away from him. And then you have to do a second phase. There's
always another phase in this game. Every single time, it's like, right, here's another phase. Here we go, and it just does so many. It's a very pure game in that it's just like it's
it's a very video game.
It's a fantastic experience. I would highly recommend it. I think it does so many things that I like about video games, and it's the perfect warm up to Cuphead later this week.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it could have had a better name. I don't think Mechstermination Force is.
I could not remember it for the life of me. For like the first 2 weeks of knowing about it, I was like, that game, the Battle Harbor game, that one. And there's a really cool reference in this game that MBZ completely missed, but I've told him about it now. But I liked it.
It's a great game. People should check it out. Again, Mechstermination Force is what it's called. So check it out on the eShop. Have a go. It's good fun. Cool. Anything else you've been playing, Bally?
I have been playing Undertale, but I'm gonna talk about that game shortly in the following episode that we're going to record ahead of time. So
cool.
Bit of a TARDIS thing going on here, but that's what we'll talk about next time.
Great, fantastic. So I was playing a lot of games, and I beat Ni no Kuni 2. I have been playing Apex Legends and things like that. Playing a lot of Smash Brothers.
Oh, I've always been playing Apex.
Obviously.
That goes without saying.
But then, something happened, and I was like, oh shit, I must drop everything because I need to play this now. So, for a long time, I've been bummed out because Ace Attorney, one of my favorite series. I love Phoenix Wright. I think it is just such a great... It was my introduction to the visual novel genre. I think it is so smart in the way that it allows you to... deduce things and, do investigations and really use logic to find the answers to these crazy cases that you do. And it's always a series that's been so well written, has great characterization, just really great and smart across the board. And there is a game or two games actually, that were released only in Japan, called Gyakuten Saiban, which is the Great Ace Attorney. And they were games that were basically set in more of an old era, I think it's Victorian times or so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's around the time when kind of Sherlock Holmes was a thing. And the idea is that you're a Japanese lawyer and you go to the UK and you go to London and you meet Sherlock Holmes, and Sherlock Holmes helps you with the investigation side, but then you're in the courtroom and stuff like that. And that was what I'd heard about it. Sounded like a great premise, sounded awesome, and Capcom never localized it. They never brought it out in the West, and for the longest time, people have been working on a fan translation for it, so that they could, put it out here for people to check out. The idea is that you should really like get a real copy of this game and then mod your 3DS and then play it on a 3DS by like using a modded 3DS to put the fan translation into it. I don't have a modded 3DS, and at the moment I don't have a copy of the game. I do intend to get one, and I do, like, when I go to Japan, I intend to pick up a copy. So technically, yes, I am pirating this game at the moment, but it is within my intention to own the game at some point. It's just that, you know, I did want to play it now because it's been so long and I've been waiting for the fan translation to come out. So I downloaded a 3DS emulator, which is called Citra, and I've been playing it on my PC. And it's interesting because it's the one case in which I think I am okay playing a game where there are frame rate drops here and there. Because it's not an action game. It is a visual novel, so 99% of the time I'm just clicking through text and choosing options, so it doesn't affect me that much, because Citra is not a perfect emulator. It's not like DS emulation or GBA or anything like that. It has a tough time, even on powerful hardware like my PC. It still struggles and chugs a little bit because people just haven't been able to optimize it fully. But the game is very playable, and it still works very well and runs very well. And as I said, I would love to buy both the first game and the second game. Bally, maybe you could pick them up for me in Japan. I'll just pay you for them when you come back. If you can even find them, that's the thing. But yeah, that is my plan at some point in the future to do that, because I do want to give money back to the developers for making the game. It's very frustrating that they just never released it over here, so I couldn't buy it and pick it up.
And it's not going to go onto the Japanese Switch eShop that people could access that way. I mean, obviously, I guess it would be in Japanese. Well,
it's a 3DS game. It's a 3DS game, so
true,
it's not going to be on unless they port it to Switch. What I could potentially do is to mod my 3DS to unlock the region thing, and then access the Japanese eShop through there, and then download it through there, I guess. Either that, or I'd like buy a Japanese 3DS and then just get it from there. At some point, you know, this will probably happen, and I will do this. But I wanted to play it now because it's just come out, and I have been excited to see it and play it for a long time, and I've got pretty deep into it. I'm on case 4 at the moment, and usually these games have 5 cases. The first one is usually a tutorial, like kind of introduction one, and then the meaty cases are usually like case 3, 4, and 5. And this one is interesting. I really do like a lot of the stuff it's been doing, because it changes the format. A lot of the traditional format of Ace Attorney games is like investigation part for one day, courtroom for one day, investigation for one day, courtroom for one day. And usually, like, the longer cases might go longer than that, but that's usually the base format of a standard case, is like 1 day of investigation, 1 day of courtroom, 1 day of investigation, 1 day of courtroom. So you're kind of pinging back and forth between the two. And the first case in this game is similar to other games where it's just in the courtroom. You're kind of learning things and just getting kind of tutorialization and stuff. But it's actually a really long case. It's probably the longest first case that I've played in an Ace Attorney before. And it's a very interesting setup, and I think it's going to be important later on to the final case. It tends to be that a lot of the cases string together and will have some overarching thing, some overarching narrative that will tie them at the end, and that's kind of why I like them, because they all have this kind of interlinking thing. And I was surprised by that. I was like, okay, wow, this game is maybe going for something a little different. And then the second case is also completely different, because it's just investigation. It's only investigation, and it's interesting because this game was pitched as, hey, you're going to be in Victorian London, but you don't actually get there until the third case, which is like halfway through the game, right? So the second case, you're on a ship, and so a murder happens on the ship, and all you're doing throughout the whole time, it's the first time you meet Sherlock Holmes, he's on the same ship as you, and so you're going around and just investigating this murder in this very kind of small area, and it introduces a new kind of mechanic that I guess is the core new mechanic. Every game has this. They introduce something different that is like kind of a gimmick almost, and the one in this game is deductions. And the idea behind it is that the Sherlock Holmes and his portrayal in this game is that he's kind of goofy, he's very anime, and he's not actually that smart. People say he's very clever, but it seems like he's not actually that smart, and a lot of his deductions are off base, and he doesn't really know what he's doing. So the idea is that Sherlock Holmes will go through this whole thing of being like, I have deduced this thing, and he'll point out all these different areas and say, so this proves that, and that proves this. And at the end of it, your character's kind of like, pretty sure that's not what happened. That's ridiculous. And so you go back through it again, and this time you have to point out all the differences and like find the contradictions in what Sherlock Holmes has been saying, and then basically rewrite his deduction to make it a deduction that actually reveals the truth. And so I've only done that a couple of times so far, but I really like it. I love the presentation of it. There's a lot of like style to it, because Holmes will like be tipping his hat and like snapping his fingers, and it's very stylized. Like they'll have like spotlights that just like pop up on characters, and the music is fantastic. Overall, the music in this game is great, but the music in those sections is fantastic, and for me it's one of the better gimmicks of an Ace Attorney game that I've played thus far, and I've enjoyed it, and I like the fact that it is kind of centered around the investigation part as opposed to the courtroom scenes, because for me the investigation parts have always been the least appealing aspects of Ace Attorney, and I think over the years they've improved them, right? Because in the past a lot of times you would be pixel hunting to try and find the exact item that you needed in a room to get the exact evidence that you could then use to talk to another person as a part of the investigation to move on, and I think overall it's been more streamlined, right? Because especially the original trilogy, there were moments where I just had no idea where to go in the investigation and who to talk to and what to do next to advance the story. So in this case, like, it puts a little tick mark after you've investigated something. Obviously they've done that in recent games too, but it's still good to see it back here. And a lot of the time you kind of know where you need to go. The game has more direction in that sense, and maybe you lose something from it, some more kind of adventure gamey aspects, but those are the least interesting aspects for me in the series anyway. So I'm actually kind of okay with them being pared back more and having more focus being paid to the courtroom scenes where you have a limited amount of evidence and you know that you have the tools to solve what you need to do there and then. So for me that's been a good part of it. But I've looked it up, and apparently the next two cases, so 4 and 5, and even the third case, it's kind of like just investigation then trial. So there's no pinging back and forth. It's just like, here's a big long investigation sequence, then we just do all the trial in just one big thing. And I think that's cool. I think that it's okay to change things up and make the formula a bit different. I overall have really enjoyed the writing. I think the fan translation has done a spectacular job of capturing what these games are and the style of them, and having these really goofy characters that like break down in court and just are over the top. They have really nailed the localization that usually comes with kind of a Capcom Ace Attorney game, and it's just a tremendous effort overall, because they're not going to put this game out here, and I think that they have done a sterling effort of just creating something that the fans can finally have to catch up on this part of the series that they would never have gotten to otherwise. And yeah, it looks very good. I'm bummed obviously that I can't see the 3D, because 3D always makes these games look far better, so that's maybe another reason obviously to get a 3DS and to mod it and have all that stuff on it. But yeah, it's been great, and I'm very deep into it. Like every night I've been playing it, and I've been like, okay, I want to get through like one section this evening. I want to get through this investigation section. The mystery so far has been interesting, because this isn't really a spoiler because it happens straight away, but the first case that you do in Japan, the victim is Dr. John Watson. So Dr. John Watson has been murdered in the first case of the game, and I'm wondering now how that's linking, because when you get to Great Britain, Sherlock Holmes, you go to his house, and it turns out that his assistant is not Dr. John Watson. It's in fact a 9-year-old girl called Iris Watson, who's an inventor. It's the most Japanese thing possible, obviously. But I wonder if there is a connection there, how that connection will pan out, and what that all means. And there's also stuff related to one of your friends and what's happened with him. And there seems, obviously, there's always an overarching thing, and it always comes together in the final case, and like all the links will go there. And it's one of the reasons why the third game in the series for Ace Attorney is so brilliant, because it ties together not only that game, but like the entire 3-game trilogy in just this amazing case that is like one of the best things that I've played in games, and that's what I play these games for, because even though sometimes the individual cases may not be that strong, it is the culmination of them at the very end when you finally hit that point and it all ties together where you're like, oh shit, and you have that moment, which is fantastic. So it's awesome. I love it. I'm just so happy. And I tweeted, I think, that like, hey man, if you put out an Ace Attorney game every year, I would play one every year, because they're great comfort food. I just really enjoy the logic of them, the deduction, figuring shit out. It's a great series. And
are there going to be original Ace Attorney games on Switch?
I hope so. Apparently they are working on Ace Attorney 7, which should be coming out on Switch. I don't know if Shu Takumi is writing it, if he's involved at all, but they've had the 2 trilogies now. They've had the 2 Edgeworth spin-off games, and they've had these 2 great Ace Attorney games, because there's a sequel to this that I think the people who did the fan translation are now working on that. So obviously I'm going to probably have to wait another couple of years for that to be released, but I will be there day one when it does, because I want to catch up and make sure I've played every game in the series and what it has to offer. So, but yeah, if you have a hankering right now, they literally just released the original trilogy on the Switch eShop. So if you've never played Phoenix Wright before, have been interested in it, but were like, it's on DS, it's too hard to get hold of, it's very, very accessible. It's very available now on Switch. Check it out on the eShop. Download it. That trilogy is excellent. Second game is a little bit of a slog at some points, but it's worth it to get through to the final game and the final case and everything. So yeah, check it out. Play Phoenix Wright. It's an awesome series. One of my favorites. So yeah, that's pretty much that.
Nice.
Cool. So we're going to take a break here, but come back after that for some emails. We'll be chatting through some things that you have sent us. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the show. As we said at the top of the show, it's a slightly shorter show this week, but we've got some more to talk about on that at the end of this segment, at the end of the show, so definitely stay tuned for that. It's the second segment. That means it's time for your emails. We always need more. We're still running low, so do send them in to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com.
We got some new people sending a couple in, so yeah, if you're new and you haven't sent one in before, send them in. We love hearing from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And also post comments, questions in our Discord server, link in the description of this show, and also on our Twitter account. It's a good old conversation we're getting on in there. We're up to about 90 users in Discord talking about all things politics, Star Wars, other gaming systems, other Nintendo games. It's a good old discussion we're getting on. So yeah, definitely join that. Our first email this week is from Javier from Brooklyn in New York. Hello, MBZ and Bally. I love the podcast. You guys do a great job. I had a fun question for you both. Last episode, you talked about how great it is to see Zelda and Link switch it up, in a different style of gameplay along with different characters and cadence of Hyrule. And the same for Mario and company with Rabbids and Kingdom Battle. My question is, who else would you both like to see Nintendo do this with? My two examples are Samus getting in her gunship and Trace from Axiom Verge getting in a spaceship, and both of them in a co-op R-type style shoot 'em up. Secondly, this one gets a little bit crazy. The Star Fox crew gets sucked into a black hole, and on the other side they play a Contra-style 2D shooter with the characters from Cuphead in that old school 1930s animation style. What do you think? Keep up the great work, Javier.
Well, a fun question for sure. There's lots of crossovers that have happened over the years that people may think would be fan fiction, but in fact they're reality. I mean, like, look at Smash Ultimate, right? Like, it is basically fan fiction at this point. We've got goddamn Cloud and Joker and, Solid Snake. It's like, how did this happen? How did this reality where this Nintendo game has more PlayStation representation than the PlayStation version of Smash Brothers did. Like, it's ridiculous. So even if we suggest things that are a bit far-fetched, there's a chance they could happen. I think we're just in an era with the internet where companies understand that people like crazy things happening, and they can sometimes be in a position to make those crazy things happen. So yeah. Do you have any picks?
I just finished Ape Out recently, and I'd love to see DK in Ape Out in some capacity.
Oh wow, yeah.
Very obvious one, I know, but the way that ape moves just reminded me so much of DK. Like, the animation is perfect, and I guess the game's maybe a little bit violent for DK to start turning up in, but Nintendo have done more unusual things in their past.
Yeah, that's true. I feel that's similar to, because like where I was talking about the art style as well, and the idea that there was some Tropical Freeze and Returns levels that had a similar kind of shaded style to them. Right. Maybe if you applied that exact like black and white filter as well in Ape Out, that could work even better to kind of represent him in the game in some senses, because that kind of silhouetted version of DK does exist and is a neat idea. I wonder if there'd be any other like moves you could add to his arsenal, like the wind-up punch maybe could be a thing you could do. Yeah,
I think you could definitely take a lot of the violence out of it, because
sure, if it's a Nintendo character with like throwing people off buildings and like bloodied into walls with shotguns,
the enemies in that game would definitely kind of feel like throwing water balloons full of blood, basically.
Right, like, pretty much.
They are very fragile, so maybe just them falling over from a knockdown punch, as you say, or I don't know. There's things they could do.
Yeah, definitely. That's a fun one. So one that I've always wanted, which I'd never think about as a crossover, but I just want to see a Fire Emblem fighting game. I want to see the Fire Emblem characters in a fighting game, and I feel like Soul Calibur would be a good one for that to happen with. Obviously, we've had Soul Calibur representation before, with Link being in Soul Calibur 2, but what if you had a Soul Calibur game that was just comprised of characters from, say, I would say a combination of Xenoblade and Fire Emblem, right? Take these two series, which people hate in Smash Brothers.
Fire Emblem versus
Xenoblade, yeah. It's like Marvel vs. Capcom, but Fire Emblem vs. Xenoblade. Everyone hates on, like, let me tell you this, Bally. One of my most frustrating things in life is games journalists who don't know what Xenoblade is and don't know who Shulk is and shit
There's
on it.
There's a lot of them out there.
And talk about how Shulk is from Fire Emblem and like all the gaming podcasts I listen to.
Are you talking about Dan Riker always getting confused where Shulk's from?
Exactly, yeah. Like Giant Bomb have no idea, Kinda Funny have zero idea. Easy Allies the only group who like know, because like Ben Moore plays Xenoblade and Fire Emblem and he knows his shit. But the other groups frustrate me because they know nothing about Fire Emblem or Xenoblade, and they're two of my favorite Nintendo series. And they constantly just shit on them and are like, why are these stupid anime people in Smash Brothers? And like, I get it.
Patrick Klepek was the Fire Emblem guy, and he's gone off to Waypoint. So
exactly right, and I think I get it, because obviously there's a lot of Fire Emblem representation in Smash Brothers, and what if you just took them all out and put them all in their own game, their own fighting game, where it was weapons-based. That's why I chose Soul Calibur, because Soul Calibur is a weapons-based fighter, and that's really the core of it. So I think if you were to take Soul Calibur, that style of fighting, throw in Fire Emblem characters and Xenoblade characters, I think you'd have a smashing good time. I think that would be a really fun thing, and you could actually go out of the wheelhouse, right? Because there are so many interesting archetypes and units in Fire Emblem that get no representation in Smash Brothers. Like, why don't we have a Fire Emblem character in Smash Brothers that's a Pegasus Knight that's just on a Pegasus the whole time? Like, that would be interesting.
If Ridley's possible, it's totally doable.
It is, but also I think Sakurai has kind of got the message that people don't want more Fire Emblem people in. So even if it was a new and interesting thing, I think people will still be annoyed by that.
Just
but
don't add another Fire Emblem user who's got a sword.
I know Bluehead. I mean, the next fucking game has a protagonist who's Bluehead, and it's just really, it's like one of those things that they really can't get away from at this point in time, can they? They're just kind of trapped in it. But yeah, get us an axe user in there. Like, I want to play as Hector. I want to fight as Shulk versus Hector. That's the fight I want to see. And Xenoblade could even throw in some of the stuff from X as well. Like, have Elma and have her have like a special move where she comes down in a fucking skell and just like destroys people. I think there's a lot of flexibility there, and you could do do a lot of fun things with the combat, with the different characters. Like, how would Ricky play in a fighting game? That's what I want to know. Like, with his stupid little staff and, like, it's so dumb. Like, I think Melia would be an interesting character, like, ranged attacks using her spells. Yeah, I think you could do a really interesting fighting game that was Fire Emblem versus Xenoblade. It would be all of my favorite things put together in one game. Soul Calibur, Fire Emblem, Xenoblade. That's my dream crossover. That's the one that comes to my mind first of all. Any others, Bally, that stuck out for you?
I mean, Star Fox is always brought up as one because I think it does need the most. It needs rejuvenating in some way. Like, that formula needs to change. And as much as I like Star Fox Zero, I appreciate the majority of people had a lot of issues with that game, and I just want to see the No Man's Sky Star Fox just kind of get those planets going, flying between planets, open it up a bit. As much as Star Fox Grand Prix, whether that's still real or fake, we have no idea. I think that sounds like a fantastic idea, but something. I just think the Star Fox universe is very rich.
We'd have to call it No Fox's Sky because they're not men.
Sky?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, no monkey sky because it's like talking about Andros. No bull sky. There's ideas.
No mammal sky. No mammal sky. That's the name of this game.
Star Fox flying between planets in a more open sense and not this linear idea.
And like to some extent Starlink is that, right? Because I think in Starlink you can like shoot off of planets and like land on other planets seamlessly. I believe that's a thing you can do. But
absolutely.
It's not like a big as open as something like No Man's Sky is, right?
Yeah. I'd love to see it go bigger and more open. What are some other ones? I was gonna say Mario's been like in sports games and things like in the past with like
he has,
as in like NBA. I don't know. Mario needs to do some sort of more European sports. I feel like rugby and cricket. Isn't that where that should
potentially
lead? Actually,
sure, like
there is rugby sevens in the last Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, I believe. So there is actually a video game of Mario playing rugby, which is hilarious.
Yeah, we don't get as much of our sports represented, I guess, with Mario and stuff like that. But I think it's also to do with Japan, right? Because like baseball is an American sport, but baseball's also huge in Japan, so that's why you get sluggers being a thing. I don't think there's ever been an American football Mario game, though, has there?
I don't believe so.
I'm trying to think, but I feel like that hasn't been done. Yeah, because that seems like something that after Strikers, Next Level would have gone on to make like the American football thing, but. Also, aren't Next Level a Canadian studio? So I don't know how big American football is in Canada. I don't know if it's...
Well, they've got their own Canadian Football League, which is much smaller and...
You would imagine they'd do like ice hockey, wouldn't you? Like,
ice hockey's there. Yeah, absolutely huge there.
That would make sense. For me, a big one is I've always wanted an RPG for the Zelda series. Mario's had his own RPGs. Those are great. They have such a different tone and style. I think Zelda is the perfect series to have an RPG for. And similar to what Square Enix did back in the day where they made Super Mario RPG, I would love a crossover between Final Fantasy and Zelda. Like, imagine a modern Final Fantasy game with Zelda characters. Or imagine even like a retro style game, like Final Fantasy VI, but you know, Zelda characters thrown in there, a Zelda story, a Zelda world. I think that would be a great combination. And I think because it's fantasy, it fits it really well. Like that archetype just works, and there are so many characters you could have in your party. Like obviously you could have a playable Zelda. She could be your mage, like using magic. You know, what if you did recruit Ganondorf? What if there was a big bad who was like some other character, and you, like in Mario RPG, how you have Bowser in your party? What if you had Ganondorf in your party as well? And you could have like things like a special move where you have like wisdom, power, and courage, like all being used together and stuff like that. There's a lot of possibilities, I think. You know, have like the thief archetype with Sheik. Like there's so many options there that you can really dig into with Final Fantasy and Zelda. I would play the shit out of that game, honestly.
We mentioned it briefly in our last Patreon show, but I do think crossing over Codename Steam and Advance Wars, or Advance Wars versus Codename Steam, and a way of rejuvenating some life into both of those franchises that have kind of vanished, and I'm not sure when they're ever going to come back. So just
Codename Steam is dead. We just have to live with that fact. That is never coming back ever. It's tanked. Like that game was £5 in a bargain bin maybe a month after it launched. It was very sad.
Do you think Giant Bomb and Kind of Funny know about Codename Steam?
They do, yes.
They do.
I think they remember it because I remember Dan did the quick look for Codename Steam and was very negative about it. I remember watching it and him being like shitting on it quite a bit. So yes, I think they do. But like, it's one of those things that people just don't talk about and don't remember. So it's sad, but you know, it's one of my favorites. So it's a shame. Yeah, because you wanted it to be like an Advance Wars game with the characters of Codename Steam.
Yes,
which is interesting. I would maybe like to see the opposite, actually, because I prefer the gameplay of Codename Steam. So I would love to see.
Isn't the gameplay of Codename Steam with Advance Wars characters Valkyria Chronicles?
Well, yes,
basically
to a degree, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a different era and everything because it's like World War I versus like more modern combat. But yeah, you're right. It is kind of that. So hey, maybe it already exists. We already did it. Valkyria Chronicles is a game. But yeah, I'm trying to think of, like, for me, what I really want in the future anyway is obviously Nintendo doing a lot of spin-offs, a lot of, side games. How long is it until we get a Splatoon game that isn't a third-person online shooter? How long is it until they take the Splatoon IP, do something a bit different with it? Because I think that's the next big thing for Nintendo is expanding upon the universe of Splatoon to make a different type of game with it. Because Mario and Zelda have done that, and they're the big franchises. Metroid's even done it with weird pinball, and Federation Force is a weird spin-off. I want a spin-off of Splatoon, and I don't know what it would be. Maybe like a Mario Paint style thing, as we kind of joked about before. What do you think for Splatoon? Is there anything that stands out to you that it could be mashed up with?
See, I think they would probably want to side with sort of single-player adventure game, but based on, and we have different views on sort of what they've done so far with their single-player stuff. I've quite liked it, but they've not really built on that world that the main levels are in when you are doing those random single-player levels. It feels quite disconnected and just kind of like a smorgasbord of ideas they had from a game like Mario Galaxy or something.
Yeah.
It feels very separate. So I think that if they did go for something single-player, adventure-driven, I think you could come up with a quirky story, a quirky adventure game that takes place in that world.
Yeah, for me that sounds far too big in scope, right? Because when I think of a spin-off and a side game, I think of pinball, I think of a puzzle game, I think of like something that doesn't take a lot of development effort, and I think a like single player, like behind the back camera Splatoon, that's not what I imagine when I say expanding the universe. What I imagine is more a smaller scale thing that includes the IP to have this like stopgap between major releases, right? And that's what they do with other series, and that's what I think that the path they would go down. So for me, like, I don't know, some weird puzzle game with Splatoon would be a neat thing to do. Maybe Box Boy. Hey, how about a crossover between Splatoon and Box Boy? Make some weird puzzles based around swimming through ink and using boxes. That could be a fun thing.
They're like so abstract because Box Boy is black and white square blocks, and Splatoon is like all over the place, colorful. If there's some way of linking those mechanics.
Speaking of which, like, there's a game that kind of is both, which is Ink, which is you play as a box and you spray, but that's like a Super Meat Boy game anyway. So that's a different thing.
And that's like £3.50 or something.
Yeah, go buy it, Bally. That's a really good game. Patrick Klepek did a video on it like years and years ago, and I was like, oh, this looks neat, and I bought it on Steam and I played it. It took me like a couple of hours. It's if you like Super Meat Boy and Celeste and that style of platformer, check it out on the eShop. It's called Ink. It's very bad SEO because like you can't search for that, but Ink. It's very cheap right now. It's awesome.
Cool. Well, there's enough ideas. Any more we want?
Yeah, I think so. No, I mean, just give me the fucking Xenoblade Fire Emblem fighting game that I've convinced myself is now my favorite thing in the world. So I want that more than anything. Yeah.
And just to get Mario crossed over with some other platformer that's not 2D Mario, because we just need
Mario and Rayman. Oh man, let me tell you, Ubisoft, they already have a good relationship. Give me a Ubi art game with that Rayman art style with Mario in it. Dear God, that sounds great.
Just Rayman Legends engine with Mario would be great.
We need the third Rayman game. We need that third Rayman, like Origins Legends. Where is it, Ubisoft? I want it. It's a perfect Switch game.
It's a great game. So our final email is from Tim, or this is actually from Discord. Tim from Discord says, "Hey guys, it's been a little while since I've written in with a question. With all the talk of Xbox and Microsoft properties on Switch, I was thinking about Nintendo games on other platforms. While I think this is extremely unlikely to ever happen, it's fun to speculate. What Nintendo franchise do you think would be most successful financially on other platforms? I'm talking purely from a business standpoint. If Nintendo wanted to sell the most copies, while 2D or 3D Mario would seem to be the obvious choice, I think there's an argument to be made for Zelda or Smash Brothers. Zelda is closer in style to a lot of single-player games on PS4 and Xbox, and Smash is universally fun. What do you guys think would sell best?"
Okay, interesting question, because I think a lot of people would say the best-selling Nintendo games would be the best-selling games on other platforms as well, just because they're the most universal and the ones that people like the most. But I don't know, there is a sense that audiences are slightly different and that there could be different reactions to different types of games, and different types of games could do better or worse dependent. For me, like, the one that is universal and would sell the most everywhere and anywhere is Mario Kart. You put Mario Kart anywhere, yes. It's like a universal language. Like, Mario Kart would be one of the best-selling PS4 games, without a doubt. Like, it would probably do Red Dead numbers, because Mario Kart is something that has gone beyond even Mario himself. Like, it is a franchise that has kind of stood taller than most other Nintendo ones in the last decade or so, and everyone wants to play Mario Kart. It's currently the best-selling Switch game, I believe, and I think it will be surpassed by Smash Brothers quite soon. But it has held the crown for a while, and that's just a port of a goddamn Wii U game.
If that had been an original Mario Kart launching with the Switch, I think it would be even bigger, because there are still a handful of people like me.
I mean, we're two examples of people who don't own Mario Kart on Switch, because we own it already, and we've already played 60 hours of it on Wii U.
Right.
So yes, that for me, Mario Kart is the one that's like, obviously, like, and that's the thing. Mario Kart is actually a game uniquely in the UK that is a very popular Nintendo game in the UK. There's no other Nintendo game here that I think carries as much weight and importance as Mario Kart does. I think that's something to do with British people being more into racing and more into driving games generally. Yeah. But it's also like, it's the way it's been marketed here, and I think overall, when you talk to someone here, if they've played any Nintendo game, it will have been a Mario Kart of some form on DS or on Wii.
And it had a huge knock-on effect, especially here with like everyone who owned a Wii and Wii Sports. If everyone enjoyed that experience, then the knock-on game that everyone would get and play together would be Mario Kart 8 on Mario Kart 8, sorry, Mario Kart Wii.
Yes.
So like, I know loads of people who have zero interest in video games but own a Wii with Mario Kart and Wii Sports, and like that's just often what they played at like university or something. And then
exactly.
I definitely played a lot of Mario Kart at university, and loads of people I know do.
Definitely. And I think also when it comes to over here, the PS4 is way bigger as a platform. So if you put Mario Kart on the PS4, it's just a much larger audience for the UK anyway. So I think more people would buy it just because the install base is just so much larger than Nintendo platforms here.
I actually think Mario would do better than Zelda on
really?
Because I think that when you take Zelda, I think there's a lot of games. Well, it's hard to compare because obviously Zelda's changed so rapidly with Breath of the Wild. But I think there's a lot of experiences. It's belittling Zelda to say there's experiences like Breath of the Wild on other systems, because there's not, but there are a lot of open world.
So you think because there's more competition of like similar styles of games on those systems that it would be harder for Zelda to do better because it stands out less?
Yeah, there's more competition. There's more people who have played, the Red Deads, the Horizons, the Assassin's Creed.
And I think on systems like that, you want something that's a visual powerhouse. And I love the art style of Breath of the Wild. I think it is fantastic. I think it looks better than something like Horizon, personally, just because I prefer that as an art direction, But in terms of raw graphic fidelity, a lot of those games are going to just outpace it in every possible way. And for the majority of people, that's how they decide if they want to buy a video game. Are the graphics good? Like, because that's the majority of mainstream people.
Right.
So I think in that sense, you're right that it does have a trickier job of standing out because it is less kind of visually resplendent compared to other games in the genre.
So I think like the clout that Mario has, because 3D platforming is so niche now, I guess.
Right, it's really the only big player in the game. Like
exactly.
There are indie games who are trying it, like you got Ukulele, you got A Hat in Time, stuff like that. But that's so small scale.
But they're really small scale in comparison to the weight of Mario. So the second you stick him on another system, I think it's something like Mario Odyssey would sell gangbusters on Xbox and PS4, personally. And I'd say more so than something like Zelda, because there is that level of competition with what Breath of the Wild is going for.
That's an interesting point you brought up, because I would have said Zelda, but like thinking about it and thinking about the fact that most people would value like fidelity over everything else, even if Zelda was like a more critically acclaimed game, I don't know that it does as well, just because of the competition in the marketplace.
I also think that Pokemon wouldn't do quite as well as we might expect, in the sense that I think being handheld is just a huge part of that game.
100%, yeah, definitely.
The Switch is obviously handheld and home console, so I think that had Nintendo not gone for the Switch and gone for a Wii U 2.0 or something, I don't think we would have seen a mainline Pokemon come to the Wii U 2.0. Like, it would have stuck to whatever.
No, well, I mean, in that universe, they would have done the 4DS, right? Like, they would have kept their two system thing.
Yeah. So I think it's a very unique thing that Pokemon does. I'd kind of start making the same arguments about something like Animal Crossing, although
I don't know, man. I feel like Animal Crossing is more of it, like similar to Mario Kart, has kind of bled over into this really big deal generally. And yes, it is more of a handheld focused series. I agree, like it generally does better there, but there is some degree to which I think there's nothing else quite like it on these other systems. Especially with the success of something like Stardew Valley, I feel like Animal Crossing is actually primed to do quite well on other systems, honestly. Could potentially do great. And honestly, if we're talking about PC as well, if we're talking about not just consoles but PC, the modding community when it comes to stuff like Animal Crossing I think would be kind of insane. And I think that would be a reason why it would do really well on like PC in particular. Because people would like design outfits and all this other stuff, and like add a bunch of stuff that you could do for customization in terms of your towns and all of that type of thing. Like adding in music mods to have like your own music play from jukeboxes in the town and stuff like that. I think that would be a thing that where Animal Crossing would shine quite well actually at the PC scene. Interestingly,
thinking what else would sell really well. I think there's definitely there's a lot of JRPGs that come out on Nintendo systems where I think Octopath could do decent, like on other systems.
And it's already been announced for PC now, so it's coming there in June. The one that keeps ringing out to me that is clearly a not very Nintendo game but would do well on the other consoles is Metroid Prime.
Yes.
Metroid Prime is the game that is like in the GameCube era. They're like, hey, we're gritty and dark. Look at us. And that type of experience is at home on the other consoles. And traditionally, Metroid Prime, not a good seller in Japan, has always been more of a Western franchise, is far similar to Western franchises generally in terms of its tone. And I think if it were to be put on other platforms, it would do very, very well. Like, it's this space alien thing, dark, gritty, would be a thing that I think a lot of people who enjoy BioShock, who enjoy like those types of first-person shooters, would jump on and would enjoy. So I feel that Metroid Prime is a game that would do far better actually on other platforms than it does on Nintendo platforms. Just because I think like there's a lot of the Nintendo audience that is not really into Metroid because it doesn't have the colourful vibrancy of a lot of Nintendo stuff that they do like. So yeah, I feel like that's excuse the pun, a Prime series to do well on the other platforms.
Absolutely, yeah. Are there any other ones we can think of? Big Nintendo. Something
not
like
really.
Splatoon.
Yeah.
I think it just gets completely squashed by Apex Legends, Overwatch. You know,
exactly. There are far too many experiences which have better online infrastructures, and are more well thought out in that way than Splatoon. Splatoon does well because it's kind of unchallenged on the Switch or on Nintendo platforms in terms of an online game. And that's why when you have games like Apex, Overwatch, like these free-to-play games, these games which are doing things in terms of friends lists and everything so much better and sharing. It's kind of hard competition. I think Splatoon is still a unique idea. I do not think it would have been as successful had it launched on other platforms. That's definitely one that I think does better on Nintendo because it's more of a Nintendo style game. And similar to things like Fire Emblem Advance Wars, I just don't think that genre is that popular generally. So for me, and even on a home console platform, Fire Emblem, I'm far more wanting to play that handheld too. So that might be another one with the handheld argument where that comes in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those are generally what I would pitch is Zelda may not do as well, Mario Kart would fucking murder, and Metroid Prime would do a lot better if it was on another platform, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
great.
Thank you for your emails. And I should say, as I said at the top of the segment, we are running low. So please send them in to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com, or post in our Discord server, link in the description.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from more people. Love to hear if you just started listening to the show, how long you've been listening, all that stuff, and if you have some fun questions for us to answer, that's great too.
The questions don't even have to be about video games if you don't want to. We can talk about something else.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would be better for them to be about video games, but sure, you can do that too. So that is that's gonna wrap us up for this week because as we said, we're doing a bit of a shorter show. But Bally, we're gonna do something a little bit fun in the week in between as well, just to make up for the fact that we've got a bit of a shorter show. Do you want to tell the folks about that?
Sure. So this show that we're recording now, slightly shorter show, is coming out on Monday, April the 15th. So as it's a shorter show, we thought, let's do something next week. So on Monday, the 22nd of April, which would normally be a non-recording week or anything, we're going to put out our third episode of TNL Ranks, which is a Patreon show, for free. So anyone, it'll come out on the main feed, so anyone can download that episode. And I think episode 3, that was us talking about some of our favorite video game systems of all time. So I think last year MBZ came out to Brussels and we sat down and had a good discussion back then. And so we thought good time to put it out for everyone. So if you want a taster of what that $2 tier looks like to get those episodes of TNL Ranks. And then I'm going to Japan end of this week, and the regular show will be back on Monday the 29th of April. So we're gonna talk about what we've been playing. We're gonna record that ahead of time. We're gonna do a jukebox segment that we're also gonna record ahead of time, and then me and Caroline are gonna record a little segment of what we've been up to in Japan and stick that in together for a 3-segment show. And then if any news breaks, MBZ has promised he will hop on the mic and cover that as well. So that's sort of the plan over this sort of Easter period as recording gets a bit tight.
Yeah, because I'm going to be in Edinburgh and I probably won't have some stuff with me. You're going to be in Japan, so we're doing a bit of prep beforehand, putting out some extra stuff, and hopefully it should all roll through properly, and then we'll be back to regular when May comes around. And then it's in the lead up to E3, man. That's a month until E3.
Until E3, wow.
Boy, that'll be a thing. That will be very, very fun. Great. So yes, that is obviously all Patreon stuff that we'll be doing. So that Patreon free episode, as we said. If you are interested in our Patreon, you can go check it out. It's patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, and where right now you can go and check out a bunch of different episodes at different tiers and things like that for bonus podcasts. Bally, we would like to thank some of our patrons for helping us.
Yes, thank you to our 2 $10 tier patrons. They're, of course, my girlfriend Caroline and Atari Alex. Thank you for your support. And also thank you to our sponsorship level supporter, who is Daniel V. We really appreciate your support. And we appreciate the support of all our other patrons. It really keeps the show on the road, and we hugely, hugely appreciate it. We did do an episode of TNL Ranks, episode 9, that came out last week. And that was all on our favorite video game developers, so definitely worth checking out. And as we mentioned, that's the $2 tier if you want episodes of TNL Ranks. You can download all 9 episodes of TNL Ranks for $2. But as we said, episode 3 of TNL Ranks is going to come out for free next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you can find us in various places on the internet. Best place to get all the stuff about our podcast and what we're doing and things is Twitter. So you can follow at TNL Podcast on Twitter and get updates there. We've got links to YouTube, links to Discord, all fun stuff. And you can also follow us individually. You can find me at Lord NBZ over on there. Bally, where can they find you?
I'm at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN 91 on the Twitters. I've tried to tweet a bit, a bit about Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lots of Star Wars things to chat about and talk about. We'll probably there'll be a bonus episode of Star Wars when that happens at the end of this year. I'm very excited for that. That's going to be exciting. Fantastic. Great. You can find the show in various places. I don't remember if I said this last time, but we're on Spotify now. The show is now on Spotify, so you can go there and listen to us on Spotify if you want to. I feel like I did say it last time, but anyway, worth reiterating.
Definitely.
You can listen to us on Spotify, stream us. It's all available there. Obviously, we are on iTunes, on Stitcher. You can download us with your podcatching app, whatever one you so happen to have. It's all good. It's all there. Your favorite podcasting services, probably, except for Google, because they aren't still in our country because it's 2019 and clearly the world isn't global yet. Not bitter about Google at all, definitely not. So that is pretty much gonna round us out and wrap us up. Have I forgotten anything? I guess the email address we can plug one more time for people to send them in, Bally.
ThisNintendoLife at gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife at gmail.com.
Fantastic.
I'm off to Japan.
Yeah, have fun, man. It sounds like you can do some cool stuff there. It's a place I still need to get to. I need to go out to Japan.
Do it. Oh, it's so good.
The
food.
The food. That's the one thing, and that's the thing that we talk about. Is like, yes, we love video games, but really, going to Japan is about food. That's my favorite thing about Japan. So yes, that's the thing. Great. Well, we will be back. Next week for the bonus Patreon thingy, and then the week after for another episode. So, thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back at you pretty soon. Bye bye. The musical interlude used on today's episode was Tobias Gregson, rival of the Great Detective, from The Great Ace Attorney. Copyright Capcom 2015.